It's Sunday morning. I got my video making here on, so I'm going to read a couple more aphorisms in our co-travel through Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche, translation by Walter Kaufmann, prelude to a philosophy of the future. And we're at a really short aphorism. It starts 35. O Voltaire, O humaneness, O nonsense. There is something about quote-unquote truth, about the search for truth, and when a human being is too human about it, il ne cherche le vrai que pour faire le bien. He seeks the true only to do the good. That's Kaufman's translation. I bet he finds nothing. One thing that's important to get, I mean, I don't want to give it a spoiler, but he thinks of this obsession with finding the truth as a vice. Doesn't mean he doesn't want to do it. It's his vice. It's an agreeable vice. It's the kind of vice that you can handle. So it's a self-effacing technique, and the technique for someone. This is why this is someone trying to answer the pessimisms of Schopenhauer or other of our cynicisms and pessimisms, and not with positivism. We know it anyway. It feels right, basically. But no, admitting that it's a vice. It's like, oh, you've proven it's not God, with Plato's help pushing us towards the true. That's automatically good, automatically helps survival, just is good, don't question it. And of course, some people are supposed to react, oh, well, I'll give up on that quest for truth then. And Nietzsche's like, oh, interesting, you've just shown it's a vice, but it's still not the worst vice, is it? Of course, he's not going to deal with it not being the worst vice as much as he is going to be making people question it, so he can make that point. But he will mention, you'll see these comments and these, like I'm saying, in these auxiliary phrases. If you've noticed, he's got a lot of things in quotes and phrases and full sentences and parentheticals. And in some of these auxiliary phrases in there, you will see him talk about this. And you know, it's clear he's not giving up truth. This is an analysis that's a part of that obsession. Right. Okay. And then I think it's also just a work to talk about the evolution of ideas. You know, like it might be right at some point. There's a automatically evolved consequentialist morality. You overcome that, master this concept of intentional morality, and it has to be overcome again. And at these stages, the issue is their timing. It's finally a little bit chilly in the morning. Of course, it is only 7, but it's been getting hot as hell. We've been having 90-degree weather here, and that's like, believe me, it feels like it's in 100 range when it gets to be just in the mid-80s here. But okay, excuse me. Suppose nothing else were given. Aphorism 36. Were given is real except our world of desires and passions, and we could not get down or up to any other reality besides the reality of our drives. For thinking is merely a relation of these drives to each other. It is not permitted to make the experiment and to ask the question whether this given would not be sufficient for also understanding on the basis of this kind of thing the so-called mechanistic or material world. I mean, not as a deception, as mere appearance, an idea in the sense of Berkeley and Schopenhauer, but as holding the same rank of reality as our affect, as a more primitive form of the world of affects, in which everything still lies contained in a powerful unity before it undergoes ramifications and developments in the organic process, and, as is only fair, also becomes tenderer and weaker as a kind of instinctive life in which all organic functions are still synthetically intertwined, along with self-regulation, assimilation, nourishment, excretion, and metabolism, as a pre-form of life. I'm sure this is one of these passages you can take a lot of ways. I see that is the philosophy that we need to develop, basically. How can you recover, for example, our dry scientific knowledge, facing the fact that we are entirely experiencing reality as bundles of drives? In the end, not only is it permitted to make this experiment, the conscience of method demands it, not to assume several kinds of causality until the experiment of making do with a single one has been pushed to its utmost limit, to the point of nonsense, if I may say so. That's a moral method which one may not shirk today. It follows, quote unquote, from its definition, as a mathematician would say. The question is, in the end, whether we really recognize the will as efficient, whether we believe in the causality of the will. If we do, and at bottom our faith in this is nothing less than our faith in causality itself, then we have to make the experiment of positing the causality of the will hypothetically as the only one. Will, of course, can affect only will and not matter, not nerves, for example. In short, one is to risk the hypothesis whether will does not affect will wherever effects are recognized, and whether all mechanical occurrences are not, insofar as a force is active in them, will force, effects of will. And I think this is a semantic thing, but you could take it as some sort of a theory. And basically, the truth in this, as I get it, is the fact that I believe that has come along in the Lakoff's cognitive science that, yeah, our concept of causality is an abstraction of our own experience of our own will. That's where we think of causality. That's the problem. When people say this law of cause and effect, they're just thinking of cause and effect as they've evolved to understand it, which is the body interacting with the world through drives. And our main concept of a cause is this intentional feeling of a doer. And that's how, when we say the rock rolled down the hill and crashed into the other rock at the bottom of the hill, we're treating that as though it was a willing thing. This is the metaphor. It's this kind of metaphor that then we think our concept of will is a merely physical thing. We forget that our concept of causes is abstracted from our experience of the world, which is that of willing. That's our idea of cause in the sense and motor world. Suppose finally we succeed in explaining our entire instinctive life as the development and ramification of one basic form of the will, namely the will to power, as my proposition has it. Suppose all organic functions could be traced back to this will to power, and one could also find in it the solution of the problem of procreation and nourishment. It is one problem, then one would have gained the right to determine all efficient force univocally as will to power. The world viewed from inside, the world defined and determined according to its intelligible character, it would be will to power and nothing else. All right. So that's his theory. Now, one interesting thing with Nietzsche, I definitely think this formalization, it's as Nietzsche says, we like our tables of truths and bullet points and systematics. But I think we can take him literally when he says, suppose this. Think it through. Well, what are the ramifications of if it works this way? Think it through based on that basis. And I think that's good to do. I diverge from I don't think we're at the point in history where imagining that one. Well, I just think I have a different way. Nietzsche helped me ask some of these questions at the time that I read him originally. But I think there's different ways to look at this now. I think basically there is in cognitive science, it's possible to dive into the differences, phenomenological differences between phenomena and our perceptions and interpretations of those perceptions. And so, for example, we can dig into the fact that all of our ideas of cause, even if they were abstracted from something other than the will, would be metaphors for something that in itself is still there's entropy about how things work. There's always some lack of knowledge, some unknown information, and I mean, this will to power, semi-anthropomorphic sounding thing, while he's writing an expose on the anthropomorphic nature of our abstractions in philosophy and our truths. I think it shakes good ideas out, but I also think that this is one that we are sorting out. But most people don't quite get it. Most people still come up anyway and are like, well, law and cause and effect, a priori, this and that. And I'm like, well, you don't even understand it. And that's this one theory, and we've abstracted from this, that, and the other. So yeah, basically, I think he's stuck putting specifically poetic words around precisely this bit of psychology, and the fact that things like cause and effect are not automatic truths a priori, but theories, sometimes very ancient good ones, but that are still abstracted from somewhere, and we can find out where, because we're in this complex of psychology where the definition and the reasons lie. All right, cheers.